City of Northglenn, Channel 8, keeping you informed of events in your community.
Regular City Council meeting to order. Joanna, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Downing.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dodge will be absent. Councilmember Snetzinger. Here. Councilmember Mullica.
Here.
Councilmember Sowers. Here. Councilmember Joe Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Becky Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Whitman. Here. Councilmember Escabel.
Here.
Thank you. Would you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any additions or deletions from council? With that, we will move to presentations. And Jim, I think you'll handle that, and then I'll ask council to move us down there also. Come on up.
I thought maybe later.
Well, as they make their way down here, a couple years ago, actually, we're trying to make it more frequent, where we kind of recognize citizens for their outstanding service to the community, and it's like a citizenship award. And officers, when they're out there, or detectives, when citizens go above and beyond to assist us, the officers have department coins that they will hand them. And then to get another coin, they have to write that person up and get it back to me. And then what we started doing was recognizing those individuals at council meetings. So tonight, I have the privilege to introduce Will. Henry Ritchie, will you come on up? Thanks, Will. Yeah, stand right here. Okay, Will, on his actions on... Yeah, you can face it. Will, his actions on December 28, 2015, you're being recognized and commended for your honesty, integrity, and act of kindness by finding $1,600 in cash in the Best Buy parking lot and returning the money to its rightful owner. I can tell you when the owners received that cash, it was the rent money and everything else, and they were so stressed out. And Will just, he just said it was the right thing to do, and that's what he did. He returned it to him. So on behalf of the City of Northglenn, it was with great pride that we present you with this certificate of recognition. Will, thank you so much.
Jim, wait a minute. Martin wants to take a picture with you.
We're being on Facebook, is that okay?
No, you're not.
He was already all over the news.
That's right.
There you go. Well,
That's
thank
right.
you so much.
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. Extremely the right thing and very proud of you. Like I said.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have economic development, and that's Debbie.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. As you'll see from my report for February, a couple exciting things for us. Redesignation of Northglenn's enterprise zones. We've had enterprise zones in Northglenn for the last 10 years. We've added different properties over the years. And it's legislatively mandated to assess every 10 years. So that was what happened last year to determine if the property still remained in met the criteria. A new plan was done at the census level. So if you look at the map, our map before was very specific to actual properties, where now it's more broad because it's done at the census level, so the contiguous properties are in there. Areas that were removed, so the only areas in Northglenn that no longer met the distress criteria was Office Plaza North and Office Plaza South. Everything else remained in the enterprise zone. We were also able to add in different land parcels at 120th and Race and Claude, which includes the Carl's Dairy, M&O, all of that property. Also the 112th and York TOD property, as well as some other commercial sites and vacant land around Irma. So that allows, if new businesses move in there, they can take advantage of state income tax credits that will be available. So those properties at that time before were not able to take that. So you can take a look at the map, and that'll show you all the new areas. Our e-newsletter, we redesigned it so it was mobile. We found that almost 50% of all the people, which was 800 subscribers, were actually looking at our e-newsletter on mobile app or their phone. 2015 year-end overview, just going to highlight a few things. The commercial building valuations doubled over the year before from $12 million to $24.5 million. That's mainly due to the hospital, which was a $16 million project. Texas Roadhouse, Ashley Manor turned in their building permits and plans, and then Avamere, which I wasn't aware of at the time, so I didn't announce it, but they did $1 million renovation to their facility. Yeah. And then for clarification purposes, I just wanted to remind everybody that when we report the new businesses, these are businesses that have a new business license. They've sent it into the business license department. So when I report these are businesses that have submitted a business license for either opening, or they've closed with the business license department. So they've actually sent in a notice there. So for the year, new reported business licenses, we had a 27% decrease. But if you add in the 15 Webster Lake Promenade businesses that we're in, we're pretty steady, about the same. You have to remember, we don't have a lot of space out there. Our industrial space is at a 0% vacancy. So there's not going to be much opportunity over in the industrial parks. We have a low vacancy in office as well. Our retail actually is low compared to most of the other surrounding cities. So you have to kind of keep that in mind, that the good thing is we're remaining stable, and we're not opening up any major big spaces in there. So we are refilling the spaces up. We did have a 4% increase in new jobs that were reported from the new business licenses, and a 17% decrease in space absorption. Again, remember, we don't have a lot of space out there. Net new jobs. So if you take the new businesses that actually submitted a license and the ones that actually closed their license or their businesses in Northglenn, we had 13 net new businesses. So if you look at that chart. So again, we are backfilling the spaces that we are, and we are in excess of that. We had additional 43,090 square feet absorption, I can't talk, in office, industrial, and retail space. So again, we were able to do increase in that, and about 500 new jobs were reported from those. And then again, that's from taking the closed out. And you've got a full list of all your opens and all your closed. And again, please keep in mind, this isn't a science. I wish it were. It's a matter of when the businesses actually report and send in the information. Just a couple things I wanted to talk about. When you look at where those open businesses, actually top 3 locations that they located, 19% in the Marketplace Annex. So again, that's over across the street from the Marketplace, we call it Marketplace Square, or where Saigon Basil is. 14% in the Malley Center, and these are the geocodes. So it's not just Malley Center, but it's also the surrounding areas. And then 12% in City Center, which makes sense because that's Webster Lake Promenade area. But interesting enough, on the ones that closed, remember I said in Malley 14% were new in that area, 20% of those closed. So 14% open, more than that actually closed in that area. Huron Center, where the former Albertson is, but Huron Street on the west side. And then in Huron at 104th, 12% open and 11% closed. So if you look at Malley, almost the same amount open and the same amount closed in the same year, as well as at Huron Center at 104th, almost the same amount open and the same amount closed. Property types that were on new business licenses reported, 41% were retail. Interestingly enough, we added in the 28 new home-based businesses in the total, and 32% were home-based businesses out of the entire total. So that truly shows you that we are an entrepreneurial community. We've talked about that a lot, and we are reaching out to our home-based businesses all the time. They actually are one of the people that actually come to our lunch and learns. The majority of them are home-based businesses because they want to learn new things. So we have reached out to them. 19% office, 8% industrial. Storefronts, if you look at the industry sectors, 28% are in services, 16% in health and wellness. The one thing that when I did the Shop Northglenn directory, I was actually amazed at how many companies that we have in the health and wellness industry. So we really do have an industry cluster there. If you go to our Shop Northglenn, you'll see we have 100 businesses, 99 businesses under that category. That's a lot of businesses for a small community like ourselves. 12% in dining and 12% in retail. And again, all of those businesses are listed there. I think the one thing we can really truly boast, besides the commercial building permits, is the unemployment rate. We were at a 3.8%, lowest rates for 15 years. So 3.8, the lowest at the year end, at 3.8 in 15 years. So that's great. Also listed in your report, and the January report, was 2 new storefront business licenses and 1 storefront one home-based business license. Then you'll also see a listing of 18 other businesses. This is where the science isn't always science. So I give a lot of credit to the business tax department. They went out and surveyed existing industries that didn't have, in our different buildings, that didn't have businesses licenses with it. So they went out and proactively went out there, and they found 18 businesses. And again, their start date is in January, because even though, and we've got a lot of companies, I can tell you this verbatim, because when we send out our anniversary cards, people will send it out and will say, happy anniversary for 10 years. They'll say, I've been here for 14. Well, it's because they didn't have a business license for 4 other years. But in our business license department, we use the date that they actually have a business license. Does that make sense? It's kind of complicated, but, and that's all I have, if there's any questions.
Questions? Yes.
Debbie, there wasn't a NERA update in here.
There wasn't anything in January that really was on the agenda. There wasn't, the only things on the agenda for resolutions were the regular things like elected and the posted piece. We had a couple presentations, but besides the resolutions, those were the only 2 that were there.
And who's the chairperson, the
Rosie.
vice?
Rosie and Jim, so it stayed the same. Yeah, no changes on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you. Okay, next is public invited to be heard, 5 minutes per speaker. Is there anyone that would like to speak to council for up to about 5 minutes? Seeing no one approach, we'll move on the agenda to the financial report. Jason?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jason Loveland, Finance Director. This is our year-end financial update. We have a presentation on the screen over here. These are unaudited numbers. These will change as we accrue revenues and expenses that happened in December that we received in January or later. So we'll update you in a few months with the final numbers, but just to know that this isn't the very final numbers. Things will be changing. I'll start off with an update on sales and use tax. Year-to-date, sales and use tax have increased over last year by $1.7 million, or 10.3%. The total is $19.2 million for sales and use tax. And I've updated you each month on kind of where we break down in a little bit more detail. Sales tax specifically is up 8.6%. Auto use tax is up 21%. Food tax is up 29%. And then accommodations tax is up just under 4%. So all of the major areas are doing well. On this graph, just as a reminder, you'll see some spikes. Those are quarterly reporting periods. So you're either a monthly tax filer, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual. So at the end of the year, in December, we'll have an update on what happened in December, you'll see that green line kind of stops in November. We just are receiving December sales tax at the end of January, so those numbers will be updated shortly. The next slide shows sales and use tax by geocode. On the monthly reports, I've been showing that on page 10. I just wanted to break it out in a graph a little bit. You'll notice the majority of the locations doing significantly better than the prior year. The one that we've talked about a little bit kind of on a decline is Washington Point. A couple of the major players, there's one business that's not doing quite as well as it did in the prior year. One business that is no longer there, the beauty supply store, which indicates, or basically shows up fairly significantly in the decline. That store did pretty well. And then also we're seeing a change in cell phone. I guess you've all noticed how instead of going and buying your cell phone, it's now a lease month to month and kind of ongoing. So the T-Mobile store over there, we've noticed a decline in sales tax revenue for the city because of the month-to-month leases following the location of where the person's taking the phone and not the transaction's not happening within the city. So that took us a few months to kind of wrap our heads around what was going on with that. So that kind of explains why Washington Point is kind of falling behind, while everything else, even without there being a new business in that location, such as the marketplace, is still doing pretty well. And then I'll move on to the general fund. So all the way through the year, total revenues in the general fund were at $24 million, and total expenditures of $21 million. Other financing sources and uses, the majority of that is business incentives. So a net change in fund balance of $1.9 million in the general fund through December. Before accruals, I'd expect that number to possibly grow once we do accruals to capture that last month's sales tax revenue, and then some expenditures at year end, but they shouldn't be near the accrual that we'll do for the revenue. And you'll see in all of the collection and spending rates, the dollar variance column shows where we are versus the budget, and then the final column, collection and spending rate, that shows how we did and where we are through the year. So taxes at 99%. Will obviously be above 99%, as we know, with sales and use tax being up over 10% for the year. Overall revenues increased a fair amount across the board. In the expenditure categories, personnel at 96%, purchase services at 80%, and so on down the line. Capital, at 87%. Follow the capital budget for vehicle replacements and things like that we had planned for the year. So overall on this report, or kind of the standard monthly, was there anything on the general fund that anybody had questions about?
Questions? Kim?
So I noticed on intergovernmental, we were only at 78% for revenue, which isn't terrible. But the one I'm really concerned about is the fines and forfeitures. That's only 57.75% of what we predicted. Based on those numbers, are we going to look at the 2016 budget and look at revising those to get a more realistic budget for 2016?
Yeah, the fines and forfeiture line specifically has been reduced significantly for the budget. That one's been challenged over a 5 to 10 year period. There's been some fluctuations. So the budget for 2015 was high. And I believe the budget in the 2016 budget's 1.3 million for that line item. So hopefully that's, as far as the budget's concerned, versus what we're actually doing, that's one of those lines that is hard to predict. Hopefully you have no crime or speeders going through your community, and that line would technically be zero. I say that with our sales tax group on our auditing, that it's nice to go find audit revenue, but at the same time, if everybody is doing everything perfectly, we would hope everyone's in compliance and it would be zero. So that's kind of where we're at on those types of things.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Okay.
And we can go back to other questions, I just didn't want to go too far.
Okay.
The Conservation Trust Fund, so that's the lottery proceeds. Revenue line item, revenues at $363,000 with expenditures of $432,000. You'll see the budget, the net change in fund balance was negative $240,000. We're at $69,000 of expenditures exceeding revenues. Consistent with the budget in that fund. On the capital project side, revenues are at $4.8 million. Again, with the accrual of sales and use tax, we'll catch up to the budgeted $5.6 million. Then on the expenditure side, $10 million was budgeted, and we spent $5.3 million. I'd expect to see an increase there as well when we do accruals. Overall change in that fund balance of $339,000 at this point in the year, to leave us with an ending fund balance of just about $12.7 million in that fund. On water and wastewater, again, you'll see taxes slightly under, we'll make that accrual and exceed the taxes line item. Total revenues of $13.3 million and expenditures of $12 million. Other financing sources and uses, that includes debt service payments. For a net change in fund balance of negative $1.2 million for the year, and ending fund balance of just over $14 million. And the other financing sources and uses, one of our debt obligations was for water rights purchase from Church, and that we made the last payment on that this year. So I think moving forward, that line item is about $1 million, just under $1 million in the budget. Then on the non-major enterprise funds, which are the stormwater and sanitation fund, revenues in the stormwater fund at $393,000 and expenditures of $146,000. Consistent with budget. Sanitation fund, total revenue of $1.3 million and expenditures of just under $1.2. I know that we have some vehicle purchases that will be accruing back in the sanitation fund. So that number will change a decent amount on the expenditure side, but overall in line with what we had planned for the budget, and an ending fund balance of $1.9 million in that fund. Is there any questions or comments on kind of the year-end recap?
Kyle?
Again, we'll follow up in a couple of months.
Just for our residents, can you tell us what the plan is? I know that Amazon is now going to start paying out sales tax, and what the city has planned on collecting that and what that's going to look like potentially.
So it will typically look much like any other online process, you know, from Walmart.com or BestBuy.com or anything like that. So we provide an address locator, and they would be using that information to identify whether it gets complicated in Colorado a little bit with multiple jurisdictions having the same zip code. And so there tends to be some confusion with, are we in Denver, are we Northglenn, we have different tax rates. So as that moves forward, obviously we'll provide all the information necessary and then keep track of that and try to monitor the reporting. So.
Okay, sure. Anything else? Any other questions? All right, thank you, Jason. All right, next we'll move to the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
We'll close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next is resolutions, and the first one is CR 18.
A resolution adopting a council travel policy for the city of Northglenn, Colorado.
Move to approve.
Second?
Okay.
Mayor, council members of Finance Committee, Jason, reworked the travel policy. In your docket, there's a few minor red line changes, and Jason can certainly explain what those changes are if council desires.
Joe, did you want to say a little more about it since you're chair?
Well, it's just some wording that we changed in there, and I think we went through with the monies too. Increasing the council budget,
The travel budget.
travel budget
Right.
for council.
Okay. Discussion?
Did we look at how any other cities do their travel budget for councils?
Yeah, well, we did, and they were considerably more. Wasn't that the fact, or I think what we were doing is we were looking at how much we spent and how much we didn't spend, or how much we have left over at the end of the year. It's been a couple of months since we did that, so.
Right, so I think the final recommendation, I think that was going to come from the committee, was to increase the individual allotment from the $2,440 to $4,500 per member. We looked at other jurisdictions, what their budgets were. Everybody does it slightly different, so it's kind of hard to get apples to apples comparison on what they do. And then we took a look at kind of the in-state and out-of-state travel, or just kind of the normal educational things that council tend to attend, and came up with a figure for what we felt was a good recommendation, that the committee considered was a good recommendation for a change in the allocation. So if, I guess, the committee is recommending it, if there's kind of some agreeance from the members, I would bring that back in an appropriation probably in a month when we do our carryover appropriation to increase the budget for that line item for the council.
Right, and that recommendation is not part of this policy.
Yeah, I didn't see the
Yeah,
dollar
no, it's
amount
not.
on there.
This is just travel. This wasn't part of that budget policy at all.
Right.
Right. It was just part of the
Part of the
discussion
discussion.
that we wanted to bring forward.
Yeah, this is just the policy.
Right.
And so,
Right.
so I was unaware of the dollar amount. The only issue that I have, and I've brought this up before, is the feeling of needing to go to another council member and what I feel like is asked to use their money, or asked to borrow money. And so
Right.
that's the only issue that I have. And the reason I ask about how other councils do it is in speaking to some other council members that are within the other cities, it's basically you're allocated to go to, one out-of-state conference or one in-state conference, or
Right.
or two out-of-state or two in-state,
Each city's a little different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, so I don't have an issue with the dollar amount or anything like that. The only issue I have is just the idea of if you run out of your money, that you have to go ask another council
Right.
member to use their money. And I don't know if that's, I didn't like having to do it last year, and so.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. I really don't like that idea myself, but.
So what's the alternative to doing that? Just going over your budget?
That's part of the reason for increasing the monies is so we try to avoid that, but, and I think with the new increase, I don't think anybody's gonna overspend. When we look at, we always have money sitting there at the end of the year. We don't spend all of our money as a whole. So that's why we increased it per council member. Nobody's gonna use all their money.
And I get that totally. And I'm just going off of kind of what happened last year, and I just didn't think it was, I just didn't like the way it made me feel, and I didn't think it was set up properly. And so, I agree with you. I think, like I said, I wasn't aware of the $4,500 number that you guys are throwing around, and so I think that's more than enough money to do what we're wanting to do. I just don't know if I agree with having that be
Asking
requested.
another council person or bringing it forward.
Yeah,
Right,
maybe
right.
just make change that and just make a request to the finance department for additional funds if you end up running out instead of,
Okay.
that would be my alternative.
Is there any other comments about that?
I just have a question or point of clarification. When I signed for my debit card, Susan Baca said that tax exempt was only for Northglenn.
No,
State of Colorado.
The state of Colorado.
Yeah, and in the document, it's the state of Colorado, so I just wanted clarification.
No, it's the state of Colorado.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Sure.
And that's
Any-
only exemption from sales tax. So
Right.
if we go traveling, then room taxes are not tax exempt.
Out of state, right.
Well, and some boarding taxes and things like that, it's only sales tax.
Right.
That we're exempt from. So other taxes, we still have to pay.
Okay.
I kind of wanted to go back to what Kyle was talking about
Yes.
for a half second.
Okay.
I do agree with Kyle. It'd be like asking my father to borrow money or something, and I do get that. But do you think that at some point we have to have a limit? You know, if a person goes over X amount, then the finance department would have to contact city council or something? Shouldn't there be a limit or a cap that they can approve on their own before we have to know one of our friends is having a party?
So I was going to mention, we did change the language up a little bit in section A, basically to say if, there was the need to go over that notification via an email, and then made it a little easier to allow for another member to provide. I, as the finance director, would love to wave my magic wand and provide more funds. That's not how it works. It needs to come through the council for an appropriation. So, if the total, I guess, I'm not going to do the math real quick, but if it's $30,000 allotted throughout everybody, and somebody's going to spend an extra $500, and somebody's going to be short. I think we've clarified it in here that an email to the council can say, hey, I'm running over this year and somebody's going to share with me. My main concern is just not going over in total, but I know that things come up, education opportunities, that maybe one year there's 3 things that you really want to go to, and that's going to kind of stretch the limits, knowing that the next year you're not. So I allow you guys to make
Are you
those.
good, or?
Yeah, I'm fine with it, and I like, not to, say too much about it, but I feel like that amount of money is gonna be more than good enough, and so I hope that doesn't come up. I just didn't like the idea of having to, Joe, can I use $500?
And you know what, dude, you can anytime.
So.
Yeah, I understand. what
So
you're
if
saying.
it's just a simple email to council saying, hey,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be over my budget, that's fine with
That's
me,
fine.
as long as it,
All right,
so,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay,
Okay.
please,
Well, I'll plan to bring that forward.
all right.
Appropriation,
But on the
increase.
policy, yeah,
So,
okay,
but-
thank you. All right, on the policy, are
Like
there
set
any
us
other
off in the
questions?
wrong
I
direction.
know,
Thanks.
that's okay. All right. Please open the vote.
Vote is open.
Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CR 18 passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next is CR 19.
A resolution approving an amendment to the investment advisory agreement between the City of Northglenn and Cutwater Investor Services Corp., doing business as Insight Investment for investment advisory services.
Move to approve?
Second.
David?
Mayor and council members, this is the company that provides our investment advisory services, and they've had a name change, so this resolution will be able to recognize this new name of Insight Investments contractually.
Thank you. Discussion? Yes, Kim?
So the only change this is changing who we're contracting with? That's not how I read it at all. So I just wanted to
think that's
get
it's the same,
clarification.
different company.
So that's a piece of it. The name has changed. The other changes you'll see basically outlined in the amendment or the contract itself. A lot of those were general legal terms describing the investment. The Probably the most significant change to the agreement was on the annual fee, there being a minimum price per month of $2,000. Previously, it was a minimum of $1,000. We typically pay, over the last several years, about $2,600 to $2,700. They do it on a basis points fee charge, so that's 11 basis points per the amount that they're advising us on. And currently, that's at $29 million. So the city spends about $32,000 annually on the investment advisor contract. So that was a change. They changed their address of the location from the contract. They changed an item that discussed being endorsed and deleted an insurance section. So very minor changes. The one, like I said, that I noted in my memo was the monthly minimum, which we don't come near, but just in case we do, the new monthly minimum would be $2,000 rather than $1,000.
Okay, it just threw me when David said it was a name change. I thought, wait a second, there was a whole lot more than that in what was on in the packet. So when was the last time that we did a request for services or any type of cost proposals for this? Amending a 2006 contract seems a long time ago. So I know we look at everything else and pricing at least every 3 years. So I'm curious on this one. When was the last time we did it, and what are the plans for looking for investment services? And then I have another 2 questions. So I can either ask the questions or you can take them one at a time.
One at a time.
I would need to double check on the 2006. I know that we've been with this firm. It's gone through several name changes. The city's been with this investment company for several years. Good or bad, they haven't changed their price in over a decade, so that's a positive for us. As far as going back out, like I said, I would have to go look to see when the last time we went out for proposals. I'm not going to speculate on that, so anyway.
Okay.
Look into that.
Okay, I'll skip my second question, then I'll go to, what exactly do we get each month? What are the advisement services that we're receiving? Do you receive a report, gee, maybe you should move some money from here to there, or what are we getting for this? Because I don't know that we've ever seen any output from these contracts.
Any output. So each month, the monthly investment statement that we provide in the council mailroom, those are our advisors. And so they're advising us on when investments are maturing and what to invest in, as that maturity happens. We have a lot of just U.S. Treasuries in our portfolio. As you know, last year we allowed corporate investments to be purchased. So they're monitoring and advising us on new investments, the time frames, making sure that we have a good weighted average of weighted average maturity to be within 2 to 5 years. And then they also keep track of our investment policy and make sure that we maintain compliance with that as well. So we don't have an investment person on staff that would sit there and monitor, $30 million. Typically, they're broken up into $1 million securities or purchases. So that's basically what their role is to advise us on investments.
Thank you.
Is this group different from the financial advisor, or is this the same? Or
A different group.
So a financial advisor is a different group other than the investment
advisor, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, please, thank you. Please open the vote.
Vote is open.
Please vote.
We'll close that vote, and CR 19 passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next is CR 20.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to issue purchase orders for a total amount not to exceed $578,491 for capital equipment purchases.
Second.
Okay. David?
Mayor, council members, this is a request for purchase order for 3 heavy equipment vehicles and a lighter utility truck. All of them are under the estimated budget amount.
Okay. Discussion?
The grappling hook truck shows that the bid amount is higher than the budget amount?
Oh, I'm sorry, in aggregate.
Oh,
I
okay.
look at the capital expenditures in aggregate, sorry.
Okay.
And it was noted in all the documentation that O'Meara Ford was contacted.
Yes, Ameriford bid the light truck vehicle, and they were $1,000 more than the state bid.
Okay, I just wanted to make note of that. All right, any other discussion? Please open the vote.
Vote is open.
Please vote.
Close that vote, and CR 20 passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next is CR 21.
A resolution approving a professional services agreement between the City of Northglenn and Hafer Wasaki Architects LLC for design and engineering services for the Northglenn Justice Center project.
Second.
David?
Mayor and councils, this is the start of the architectural engineering design services. It's a follow-up of our needs assessment and adjacency analysis we started in 2014. Hafer Wasaki is the architect that our design committee have selected to start this process. We're requesting roughly $2.1 million for the design services, hopefully to be completed. The basic design completed this year. Hafer Wasaki would stay on, obviously, until the building is commissioned. There's $2.5 million in the budget line item for this part of the project.
Discussion?
Mayor, I have a few concerns, and
Okay.
I'm actually going to ask if council would be in favor of putting this back to a study session to go over some of the items. One in particular is the funding. I know we've had discussions about it, not as a current council. I have some concerns about moving forward without having officially decided on how we're going to pay for this, how it impacts what we're going to do with City Hall, municipal campus. We've also had comments that there's been a public meeting, and I want to stress that it's not been a public meeting. We flyered residents that were directly impacted. Mayor made a comment at one of the council meetings that public was invited to attend. It was not a full public meeting.
But we did invite.
You invited them the week of the meeting. You did not notify the residents to come to that meeting in enough time in the same format that you do any other meeting. It was not that. It was chief being proactive about talking to neighbors in one particular area, and it got announced as a meeting. It was not a full, let's have the same public participation that we do with everything else. It's $22 million at a minimum. The wish list has grown. I don't know why we wouldn't want to have it back. And I know we don't want to hold things up, but I'm not saying I'm not in favor of a police department, but this is a lot of money to not have a discussion with the current council. And all of the numbers that have come through have been different repeatedly, and I have them all sitting right here. So I hope council did their background work on this. So I'm just asking that either we table it or I'll be a no vote.
Okay. Is there, David, do you have any, or before I go to staff, is there any other discussion?
I have a whole lot of stuff.
Sure.
So I agree with Marcy in that we need to find out how we're paying for this, because we have had general discussions in the past about, gee, these are possibilities, and these are possibilities, and these are possibilities. And if we do this, we might be able to go this way. If we do that, we might be able to do that, you know, geo bonds and all those. And we were given a thing at our dais tonight about a summary of funding that still had just some options. With city staff will be working with its financial advisor to identify the most advantageous financing structure available for this project. And we haven't received really anything we just haven't made a decision. And I think that is critical, that we know where we're going or how we're going to pay for the center. I do want to see this moved over. I'm actually pretty perturbed that it's taken us this long to even get to this point. We should be signing a construction contract right now, not an additional, let's go out and take another year to see what the building is going to look like and do to the architectural. I'm really upset about the delays. The delays have caused significant price increases. I think another year is going to increase that cost again, pretty significantly. And I think that it would have been nice for council to have had a discussion on some of the additional items that were placed in this request, and just kind of wondering, negotiations involving the additional design for things that weren't included in the RFP. And that added to the cost to this project, and I'm concerned about that we're doing that with some of these projects. There were just some different things in here that I was concerned about. Some of the dates, they're wrong dates where we have construction going on in February, March of 2016, just some things like that. And then some of the information we received in the emails seemed a little bit contradictory to me. One of those was the proposed HW contract does not include construction management. So I was trying to figure out what construction administration, what's the difference between construction management versus construction administration was. Because there is construction, I think, administration in the proposed contract. So, and I guess I feel differently about the whole public input process, where I don't think that we need to have 4 special meetings for public input on this project. It's for our police department and our courts. It's not for our rec center or city hall, where we're going to have the public who may be able to rent out spaces and do different things. It's really for one function. I don't think that we need to go to the public in special meetings asking them, what do you think about the design? What do you think needs to be included in this facility? This is really a special use facility. I think having council meetings and public meetings and asking people, please come and tell us what you think about this, is the way to go. And I don't think that we need to take the extra time to have a whole bunch of extra public meetings when, like I said, we should already be doing construction on this project right now. So I'll leave it at that. I have other things, but I'll leave it at that for now.
I can
David, do you want to respond
Sure.
to some of those?
I'll try to take them one at a time as I remember. Kim, I apologize for the dates, first of all.
If you could respond to Marcy's concerns, I would appreciate it, because she was before me. If you could.
Okay, we'll go to the budget concerns.
Thank you.
I guess, staff was under the impression over the last couple of years that I think we had a good feeling about what council's understanding was of how to fund the project. If you look at the budget book, which you approved, $1.7 million was transferred into the capital projects fund, which made part of the difference up from the $2.5 million assigned for the engineering and architectural services for this project. Jason's memo that was supplemented to my package today basically outlines 2 possible ways of funding the balance, which would be the construction of somewhere between 15 and 16 or 17 million dollars. Right now, the unassigned fund balance in the general fund is $12.5 million. So I don't think having to fund this, and there's probably $2.5 million in the capital projects fund unassigned. So I think that the discussion, or at least the feeling I got from council, is to move forward with this project. There's many ways that we could possibly fund this project. It's not a question of how can we. It's a question on, do you want to take on some debt, more debt, or no debt? I mean, I think what Jason and I are recommending is we take on some debt for the project. This is a great time to borrow money. Debt is cheap, and it may not be that way for long. So the funding part of this is, in my mind, one of the more easier things to address. I don't know if that's making you feel any better or not, but the money is there.
And just for the record, it wasn't the 1.7 that I knew was in the budget that is my concern. It's that we did approve that. I'm not disputing that. It's the conversation that didn't happen after that. So when I have a resident who calls me and they say, how are you? What discussion have you had? I have multiple numbers and we never actually decided on it. That's the issue I have.
We don't know what the exact numbers are, Marcy. That's the whole purpose, and I can go through the design process. Right now, we've spent a great deal of time on a space assessment and adjacency analysis. I have no idea what the building looks like, so it's hard for an architect to say, I'm going to design something when they don't know what you want, and it's hard to price something when we don't know what it looks like. So the prices aren't there. This is the first step to get us to the point where you're going to feel comfortable. What we know, we got to pay for at the end.
Okay. Now, Kim's issues? Did you want to respond to Kim?
Yep. So construction administration, construction management, there's a huge difference. Construction administration is really a fiduciary responsibility of the architect or engineer of record to manage through the project only to a degree to ensure that the red line drawings and the construction and the project is built appropriately. Construction management is really the day-to-day field activities to manage the construction, the vertical erection of the building. It has nothing, so construction management can include construction administration, but just because we hire an architect to follow through with the contractor, it doesn't mean that they are allocating resources to be out in the field to manage the physical construction of the building. That's totally different. On conceptual design, part of the process, and what I hope council will get comfortable with, there's many checkpoints along the way of this process to come back with council. I mentioned a whole series of building efficiencies, LEED type designs, sustainable type work in the building. The first step is to really roll up your sleeves and try to understand what the building looks like, what kind of those concepts want the building. I mentioned a firing range, and that is just something that we want to make sure we didn't leave any stone unturned. It doesn't mean there's going to be a small range there where the officers can discharge their weapons. But I wanted to look at every possible scenario that could go into the building. So as we get through these early stages, the next 3 or 4 months, you're going to come back with an engineer's estimate of probable cost for some of the concepts that we want to see incorporated in the building, and that will get us the first step forward. The next step would be a 30% construction design drawings, where we get another cost estimate, so we start to hone in on what the cost is. The figures that you've seen right now escalate every year with inflation. They escalate every year with the competition we have in the market demand here. And there's many changes in the figures. And I'm not going to be able to give you a complete figure until I have the construction documents ready to bid. That will be the last time where I get 100% handle on what the cost will be. And it's not a project that, believe me, and Jim can attest to this, I'm putting him to work just as hard as everybody else. I'm working as hard as I can to get this project going as quickly as I can and still be prudent that you're getting a good project.
Kyle?
I have a question for Jason. In regards to paying for this project, I know that David referenced that it's really cheap right now to be borrowing money. And in an earlier email, David had sent out a rough estimate of what he thinks the total project cost might be. And obviously, I'm not going to hold that, but it was in the $22 million range. Is there a way to lock in these bond rates at all for this project right now, or these interest rates for these projects? And knowing that we're moving forward, or what does that look like? Or do we have to wait to get 6 months before we get the 30% architectural drawing?
It'd probably be better to get an idea of what the actual amount we wanted to borrow. I think we're in a position with the 0.5% sales tax and the capital projects fund that we do have funds available in there, I believe it's about $10 million. And we also have an ongoing revenue source, as you see on that document that was on the dais, annual revenue of about 2.5 to 2.7 million, and we're looking at annual debt service for this project, assuming it's $17 million of less than 1.3 million. So we have a way to fund the project either through the 0.5% reserves that are in the capital projects, and then also in the ongoing revenue stream. Part of the election in November, where we took the sunset clause off, it was going to expire in 2025, was to assist us in being able to, build things like rec centers, provide for the community, and upgrade infrastructure and other facilities by taking that time limit off. So I think we've talked about this, dating back to June of 2014. Nothing has really changed on the financing. I think part of why we've been really non-committal on any one strategy is because we were yet to determine, it went from a police station to a justice center to a whole civic campus back to a justice center. And so I think, as Whitman mentioned, that things have changed over time. And part of that is because of, kind of the various iterations of what are our overall plans and what are we going to plan for the future. I think I've talked about it on the financial side of, you know, a full commitment into one project. How is that going to impact us on, you know, projects 2, 3, and 4, whatever those happen to be. But we want to position ourselves to be able to do everything that, you know, that we want to be able to do, and not limit ourselves or pigeonhole us in any way that we, you know, first come, first serve type of situation where we've put ourselves in a little bit of a bind. I don't think that we'd ever get ourselves in a bind, but not knowing the, you know, the full scope of kind of the whole master plan for the whole Civic campus definitely makes us hesitate a little bit to identify exactly what we would do. And that's where I mentioned, you know, working with the financial advisor. At the time that we want to do the project, you know, we talk about private placement. That's where we would go straight to a bank or to a group of banks and ask them, is this something that you want to get basically give us a loan for? You know, or do we do a certificate of participation, which is a little bit of different mechanism? So there's a lot of options, and I think depending on the timing and kind of what the overall vision is, that's going to impact, you know, how we pursue, you know, with our advisor, kind of the financing. But the funds are available. The 0.5% sales tax specifically is kind of what we've identified. I agree. I don't know that we've, you know, had a full conversation to say, and on this project, this is exactly how we're going to do it. And I think part of that is the process of, you know, that David's going through to move forward and find out exactly where we're going to be with the project. Is it a $15 million project? Is it a $20 million project? I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle, as we've been talking about for quite a while. But anyway.
Did you have another
Yeah,
question?
is there a way to lock in any of these rates, though, knowing that maybe we're 6 months out from knowing maybe a more solid number on the cost of this project? Is there a way to lock in any interest rates, be it you know, from private loans, be it from certificate of purchases? Is there a way to lock in a rate?
We can lock in rates ahead of time.
Okay.
And like I said, mostly it's going to depend on what we feel like we're going to need to borrow or would like to borrow. So.
Any other discussion?
Here.
Yes.
I guess my major concern is the new council members, I'm coming in and I'm playing catch-up. And playing catch-up makes me very uncomfortable. I too want to know how we're going to pay for this. I really don't believe in putting out 25 or 2.5 million or 1.7 million today for for something that we think we're going to do, and then later on it not get funded. I'd rather either have a study session, discuss it during our retreat, postpone this in some way so that we all have the same information and we all know what we're talking about before we make a decision. That'd be my input.
Yeah. Any other discussion?
You know, this is the same conversation we've been having for years, and it just goes around in a big circle, and we're all getting sucked into this tornado type thing, you know? There isn't enough time in the day to throw out the analogies that can describe what we're going through right now. We need to do something, we need to do it now. Either we say no and forget about the whole thing, or say yes and get the ball rolling, because all we keep talking about is, well, we got to do this. We got to pay for this to find out how much it's going to cost. And that's been the discussion that's been going back and forth for forever now. And in study sessions and in council meetings and all this stuff. And, you know, frankly, I'm getting tired of it. We need to do it. We need to get the ball rolling on this so we know what we're looking at.
So we want a municipal campus, so should we just have them bring that forward so we spend $22 million there too?
We're not spending $22 million. We've approved
You're
this.
sort of going that direction.
Wait, well, let's have one
But
person
we've
speak.
approved this money to find out how much money we're going to have to spend. So we need to do it. You know, we've got to get this thing going. We've been talking enough about it.
With all due respect, when you say "we," I haven't been here, so I'm not part of "we."
Understood, but
Okay.
you know something? If, let me just throw this out there, okay? In 2 more years, because this is exactly where this is going, there's going to be new council members on here, and they're going to raise the same thing. You know what? I haven't been here long enough to make a decision on this. This is what happened 2 years ago, or maybe 2 years before that. You've got, we approved the money to get the ball rolling, so you've got to throw your trust in the previous decision to get the ball rolling, and let's do it. You know, I'm tired of dealing with this and talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. You know, we gotta get it started.
Again,
And this is the start.
I respectfully say I wasn't part of "we."
And Marcy.
And you know what? And the next council that comes up here is not going to be part of we.
I'm
It's going to be 10 years, and it's going to cost us $40 million. And this building is a pile. Have you been into the police department?
Have you been
gone up to
upstairs?
that front office up there where those dispatchers sit, and have you smelt that room? It smells like mold is just growing up all over the walls and stuff. I bet you if we tore that place down, it would be absolutely disgusting.
Well, I think you're looking at some health issues when you're talking about that office down there, which kind of distracts from where we're going with it. I agree with you that just from my being around the situation, that it has been going on for a really long time. I agree with Antonio that as a new council member, I don't have all the information that I need to make a good decision moving forward past this point. I think that my responsibility as a new council person is to get myself educated up to speed with you guys, not for the new council people to hold back the old council's decisions. So with that in mind and knowing that my city council, who I trusted in the previous term, had already budgeted the money for this portion of it, I would be more inclined to go with this step rather than hold back and then make a commitment not only to the people in my ward, but then it's my responsibility to get educated on what I missed in the last 2 years. So that's just my comments on it.
Well, and you know what? All of us who have been here are just as much in the dark of where it's all going right now, but we're not going to know unless we do this, unless we do something.
Well, I think if we had a discussion and we had some form of presentation with information, we could probably make a better decision. And I realize that neither you nor I may be here in 2 years. You know, tomorrow's not guaranteed to any of you. Yeah, well, tomorrow's not guaranteed to anybody. So, yeah, to say who's going to be here 2 years from now, that's irrelevant.
Marcy, I'm sorry that I cut you off.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I
So
think
Kyle?
that, you know, I think to say we're in the dark of where we're going, I think is maybe not the most accurate statement. If we're gonna be spending $2 million to design this, I think we're going down the path of getting a new police department. So I think we're all aware of that. I am frustrated too, not knowing how we're going to pay for this. I know that we've talked about all of these options, but we haven't come up with a solution. And maybe that's the process, and we're not used to the process as council because this is our first big project, I think, in a long time. But it is frustrating it is. One thing I do have an issue with, though, and Kim mentioned it, is the additional $360,000 for the different features in the shooting range. And I know what you're saying, David, about not leaving any stone unturned, but I feel like that should have came to us. That's a large addition to this project. And so I think that I really don't have an issue with it, with how you're describing it and not leaving the stone unturned, but I still think that that's something that needs to come to us. With that being said, I don't want to slow this project down anymore. It's been one of the most frustrating things coming on council, seeing how slow government moves as a whole, and I don't want to be an anchor to anything. But I definitely think it's something that we need to address in the near future. That's why I asked you about locking in bonds, rates, and so it's something that I would like to see addressed soon.
Yeah, that's fine. I think one of the things that David's talked about on the cost is actually the construction cost that is changing more rapidly, as you guys know, with interest rates. I mean, they're slow, kind of moving at a snail's pace, and kind of are expecting to for the next year, so.
But we still have a range. We have a solid idea of where we're going to probably be on this project. Is that
Yeah.
fair to say?
That is fair to say.
And Kyle, I think you described it right, is we've got to get moving past this point, but we can still have discussion on what's going to be there and what's not going to be there and all that stuff as we go, but we just need
To get started.
to get started.
Right.
And we can have discussions as this process goes along, but we need to get.
It's definitely a dynamic project. It's engaging. There will be learning all along the way. There's a large contingency in this project. I think council's known me for 7 years. I'm a pretty good project manager, and like I said, I'll vet these prices out and I'll bring it back to council. It's like I said, I want to start with a facility that's a 2030 facility, like I said in my memo. But at the end of the day, maybe some of the things that we like to have aren't the things that council wants in there. But the part of the project is when you're building a police station like this, is you need to look at everything, and that's all we're trying to do at this point.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Yes.
I just want to say that I very much feel Joe's frustration in this. We made the decision as a council that we were moving forward with this project, period. So we should have moved forward with this project, and now here we are talking again, maybe we won't move forward. No, we've got to stop that. If the decision was made, move forward with the damn thing. A comment, though, on their hourly rate. So for 2016, we have an hourly rate. Well, theirs clearly goes into 2018, so we're going to get an additional 5% increase for their prices, and is that what the contingency is going to be paying for? And I'm really, really dismayed about this additional design work. And so, Jeff, I have a question for you on that. Because these items weren't in the RFP and other people didn't have the opportunity to be able to look at those and provide pricing for that, do we stand any risk of those folks who weren't selected coming back and saying, wait a second, that RFP wasn't fair because there is additional work?
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot. Your standard RFP documents allow you to negotiate additional changes to the scope after an award of a contract. So you're not going to have any issues with that. Right. After reviewing the bids, I should say. So you haven't actually awarded. So.
Kim, the three contractors that made the short list all bid the same work. It was the contractor that was far and away above the other two that we selected to negotiate with. And I do want to point out that $200,000 of the 360 is really a supplemental effort to spec out specialized equipment, which I think it's well worth it. The earlier cost from 2015 or 2014 was $471,000 to do that work. So, like I said, as we start to talk and learn more about the project and specialized equipment, things that need to go into the police station, into the lab, we're getting a better handle on the pricing. So I debated whether to put all these costs in a 20% contingency in this project, 15 for design and 5 for construction. But it's there if you need it. But believe me, I'll keep council informed as we move through this project. It's too important for myself, for Jim, and for you folks and all your constituency. This will be an inclusive project.
And I'm not afraid of it being inclusive, and I think staff's, that's not what I'm afraid of. What, I think the concern that Marcy's bringing up too is when we get those questions from our constituents, our residents, of how are we going to do this, and we don't have answers, and that's where that frustration, I think, can come from. And so, I think, trying to figure out the financing and how we're going to pay for this is going to be a big part, and I know that we're going to have solid numbers down the line, but I think that seeing that information and being able to provide that information to our residents would be I know, extremely helpful for me. I can't speak for Marcy, but.
No, I think the good answer to that is when people call and ask, is the truth. We don't know. We have options out there.
That doesn't go over well sometimes, Joe.
Well, we know how much we're paying for this portion of it. We know what we're paying for this portion of it. And then when we find out how much it's gonna cost, then we start getting into how we're gonna finance it.
You know,
And
I feel like we do know how we're gonna pay for it. It's the 0.5% sales tax that's dedicated to capital. That's how we're gonna pay for it.
But that's not, I mean, that's how we're gonna pay for the debt on the project that we're gonna have to take. That's not really how we're, I mean, I think it's
not cash,
It's-
basically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a smokescreen for our residents. Our residents want to know, how are you paying for it? We're going to have to tell them, we're going to go into debt to pay for it. We're going to pay for that debt using this dedicated source.
Correct.
And I think that's really what we're trying to tell our residents. We're not just saying, oh, we're paying it with the 0.5% sales tax, when that's true, but it's not the whole story. And I think that that's misleading to tell them that that's how we're going to pay for it.
And also, I'm not sure if it was addressed in here too. I think, you know, the marijuana tax, I'm not sure if I saw that in any of the numbers or not, because that's going to be money that could be used for this project as well. Is that correct or not?
It potentially can be. It's not gonna be something that we can use to leverage financing.
But it's money that can be used to pay for debt, correct?
It could be, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion?
Just final point,
Yeah.
how much can we get this project moving forward in that time frame crunched? So that it's not 3 years before we have a building?
When I was instructed to get this going, it was, I believe, August or September. I think this is moving pretty quickly. I anticipate design probably through this year. Depends on.
How can we get that scrunched up? To me, to take a year to design a building is really long.
It's not an office building, Kim. We'll do it as fast as we can, but, you know, there's going to be a holding cell in there, there's a sally port, there's a lot of specialized equipment, there'll be an emergency operations center in the room, there'll be a municipal court system in the room. I mean, to design a building like that, it's typically 9 months to a year, and I think we're going to move on it as fast as we can, and I got to get your involvement in the project. So you just can't do it any quicker than that.
So bottom line is, there's no way to increase or decrease the amount of time it's going to take for this design, is what you're telling us.
It would be very difficult for a firm just to get through the process. I mean, it'd be easier on the construction side of that, where you would pay incentives, where a contractor could mobilize a bigger workforce. You know, the engineering and architectural trade, they're the firm that we got here is a sophisticated national firm, but they don't have 50 people they can just throw at the project. And even if they did, it's the process. It's not the amount of work and how fast they can do it. It's getting through the process. You got public meetings, you got design team meetings, you got back and forth. We need to come to council to get approvals for certain steps and what the project's going to look like. So, you know, I guess all I can say to council is believe me, Jim is breathing down my neck to get this project done. I'm going to work as hard as I can to get this done as quickly as I can.
But again, so the bottom line answer is that we really can't make it quicker.
That's right.
Thank
It's
you.
probably a year design, 2 years.
That's all I
for
was
construction.
wanting to get to.
All right, is there any other discussion? And I agree too. I mean, this is the first step to moving forward, and I think there's been a frustration among all of us that it has been slow, you know, for a number of reasons. So now this is the first step, and then after that, then we'll just take it as we can. And I agree with Kim, you know, it should be done tomorrow. I mean, tomorrow. So.
We should be up there with our hat hats on,
That's
our
right.
shovels tomorrow.
I'm doing
Okay.
a couple jobs right now, so.
Okay.
Can I just ask you,
Yes.
if we can maybe get an estimate on when we might be able to have a meeting where we can decide on how we're gonna pay for this project? And I know what you're saying, you know, the 30% and all that, but if we can get a solid date, you know, saying this is when we're gonna be looking at bringing it to council for you to decide how to pay for this project.
We can arrange a study session in the near future, sure.
I mean, and that's something we have to do. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
So-
I would just appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, any other discussion? All right, please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CR 21 passes with 1 no vote cast by Councilmember Whitman.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move next to communications, and Kim, we'll start with you this time. No?
I'm good.
Okay. Kyle,
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
all right?
Nothing for me, Mayor, except go Broncos.
That's right.
Went we
All right,
rode.
all right. Okay. Nothing?
The Chargers.
My friend, it's like we're starting scratching.
Gosh.
Yeah, no doubt.
The only thing I'll mention is we did have coffee with the mayor today, and we had probably close to 75 people, I would imagine, that came to hear about the new hospital, and that was really the draw for it. And it was a very good presentation, and people, I think, are very excited about the new building that's coming up. So, Becky.
All right, I'll look in the camera and say, yes, the Broncos won the Super Bowl. Yes, okay? But I will tell you that I did wear my Charger shirt underneath my hoodie. Wait, there's a reason. It had the last Super Bowl game that y'all got tromped on, because every time I wear my Charger shirts, you win. Every time I wore the sweatshirt, you won. So see, it was
Wear it more often.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Fred.
then.
I really don't have anything else other than to my fellow Ward 2 people, see? Go Broncos.
Marcy.
On Tuesday, I attended the Station 63, gave a tour of the fire station and the needs that they also have here in the city that are pretty grand. Some real issues getting the fire trucks in and out, issues with kiddos getting in front of the fire trucks and them being able to pull out safely. Not enough space in their fire department either. So something that they're evaluating as well, and what they might be able to do for renovating, restructuring that. And I'd encourage residents to stop in and see that place too.
Is that the one on
That's on Irma.
Irma?
I've got a question for you. I know the fire elections are coming up soon. Do you know when they are, so that we might be able to,
Is it May?
is there a date that we can actually
Do you
give
have
our
the actual
citizens
date?
so that we can put it in the connection and put it on the website? Because we don't really get that.
I think it was on the website yesterday.
Was it on the website? Okay, then I missed that.
And I believe Jenny's up for re-election.
Yes.
And also Tim Long, both of them.
Oh, Tim too?
So, May, are you looking for the date? Okay. And maybe you can get that back to us later, but I mean, I just think it's important that people know when the fire election is. So, all right. Antonio?
I too attended the coffee this morning, and very, very much participation, very nicely attended. Also on Saturday, the mayor and I attended the 4 Chaplains Award ceremony, memorializing 4 chaplains who gave up their life vests as the, I have trouble pronouncing this, Dorchester went down in 1943, and it was very informative and amazing. And that was done by the American Legion. It was awesome.
It was a really awesome ceremony. They had high-ranking officials from many areas, so it was very moving, I would say, yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
For the Fire Rescue District, the nominations must be filed by February 26th, and the election for the 3 at-large director positions will be May 3rd.
Thank you.
So it's on their, they posted it on their Facebook. I remember seeing it, so
Thank
those
you.
are the dates.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Antonio, anything else?
That's it.
No?
Thank you.
Okay. Joanna?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay. David?
Just one thing, council members, I know you got a late legal memorandum from Corey. Just a bit of good news. The Colorado Water Commissioners supported our motion to dismiss today on the Thornton's objection of our site application of the wastewater plant. So that's good news.
Good news. Yes, thank you. Okay. Jeff?
Thanks for having me. I'm glad I got to answer at least one question tonight.
Well, I'm glad you came. We did, you know, I thought maybe you forgot where Northglenn was, you know. Okay. Next, we'll move to public invited to be heard. Is there anyone that would like to speak to council for up to 7 minutes? Okay. Next, we'll move to public invited to be heard. Is there anyone that would like to speak to council for up to 3 minutes? Seeing no one approach, we are adjourned. Thank you.